Okay, now I'm ready.
We are the message of the day today is that we are all winners because we're starting a new series and there are no losers in this series. It's called Mount Rushmore. We have our first episode. Megan and Brian, you're winners. You're always winners to me.
Thanks, RJ. You're a winner to me too. You too, Brian. You're a winner too.
I think the winners are the songs that we are selecting. You guys are good people. I enjoy podcasting with you, but it's the songs that we're selecting.
Yeah, true.
It's
True.
true. All winners
Um,
today.
okay, so a couple things. The first thing we have to do is talk just briefly about the bunch of reprise shows that are coming up because I always do, and I'm not going to stop now. We have shows this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 4 shows in a row. Thursday in Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm going to that. It's going to be great. They're recreating the Wipeout show, so that's like something that if you like fish and you're in the area, you might want to come to that. Friday night at Saratoga Springs. I'll also be there, so if you happen to be there, come say hi. 71094 from SPAC. That's the show. On Saturday, we have Brooklyn Bowl, 12:30:97. This is the real deal, guys. We're getting so serious.
Can we just talk about how fucking excited I am to hear 12:30:97? Like, come on. Everybody in the area needs to be at the show or I'm not going to be your friend anymore. So there you go.
I
right,
just
there
hope
you
you
go.
guys have the guy like in the 5th row center on the video who is the only person on the floor at MSG on 12:30:97 who realizes that Snake and Sally and is like hands fully up in the air, jumping like 10 feet in the air. That dude on the video gives me chills every time I watch it. Wherever you are, if you would know who you are. If you're that guy, you were the only one who recognized it on 12:30:97. They need a replica of that guy at the start of the show. That's all I'm going to say.
Maybe I should wear the same outfit I wore on 12:30:97. I should wear something similar. But I don't have enough face glitter or twisty little clips to put my hair in, and I don't have enough like crop tops and wide leg pants with like a belt loop chain on it that tucks into my back pocket. That was my look.
1997 ruled.
Yeah.
Man.
That was my
Every girl looked
raver
like
era.
Every girl looked like they were off the set of Clueless. I loved it.
Totally.
I don't want to spoil anything, but will you
Yeah, no.
have a Tom Marshall replacement to sing Hannibal Lecter?
Well, he's going to be there.
I don't want to spoil it.
Spoiler alert: where if you enjoyed that part of the show, you will be able to enjoy it again in some fashion. Is what I'll say.
Oh my god, that's going to be so sick! I can't wait.
Sunday night at Dharma Bums in New Hope, PA. Our friend Steve Vickner, the Vic, who you know, Brian, he set us up with this show. So we're playing at Dharma Bums in New Hope, and they're playing 12:11:99 from the Spectrum.
Sick.
Yeah. We got a show coming up on March 27th at the Pickle Barrel in Killington, and then a bunch of shows in April, which we'll talk about again later. But I gotta play a voicemail from a listener about. Well, I'm not even gonna say it. It's called a spoiler, so we're just gonna do this. You guys ready? You guys ready? You know what spoiler
Yeah, let's go.
Hello, friends. This is Tim from Rhode Island. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Just like a couple things here real quick. I was fortunate enough to see the Reprise band last night, and those guys are the real deal, man. To break out the mandolins and the upright bass for I'm Blue, I'm Lonesome, like it was incredible. They nail it, and if you get a chance to see Reprise when they come to your town, don't miss out. And I have one quick request for you guys. When you're reviewing a show, could you please just read the set list at the beginning of your review? I'm usually listening in the car, and I can't take a quick glance at the phone to see what the set list of the show is. And yeah, just that. Keep up the great work, guys. See you on the summer tour.
I feel like Brian, you would appreciate that. I think you like to do that. I think that's a really good note that we got.
I really appreciate that note. I would love to do that. That would be my job going forward.
Great.
I'm here for it. I just want to make sure that it's not wasting any of RJB's time. So as long as RJ, we're asking right now, RJ, do you approve of that slight digression where I will read a full set list of the show? Because I'm into it. I think our caller is absolutely on point. This would help our listeners.
It depends on the context. I mean, if we say like this,
So we're doing
this
like a bunch
if,
of shows, or
if Brian's like this antelope reminds me of the 7/16/94 version, then we have to read the entire set list from 7/16/94.
no. Just
Okay,
the
all right,
show
all right,
we're reviewing.
all right.
Recapping.
Now you're being ridiculous. All right. That is not at all what this caller is asking for. He's saying if we were talking about a specific show, like a run, like Mexico 2019, we probably should have done going from night 1 to night 2 to night 3 was just give a quick rundown of the set list.
Fair.
Tim, I believe
Seems
that's your
fine.
name, the caller. Smart man. Thank you for calling and making a great show upgrade request. I appreciate it.
It is good. I think the only reason we sometimes don't do it is that so we don't end up in a position where we're like, and then they played this song, and then they played this song. So, but I think what he's saying is more like, give me the rundown quickly.
Give me an overview.
Give me an
and then dive in.
overview. Yeah. I like that.
All right.
I do like Forbin 777's idea here of a podcast of Brian reading set lists entirely. I would be into that. Like just
Yeah.
put some
Same.
some lush music behind me, and I could just be sitting here and hold on 1
It's so
second.
relaxing.
Just be sitting here and being like sneaking Sally through the alley. Segue
Spoken word.
into taste. I'm into
God,
this.
so
Oh
Very
my
into
God,
this.
totally. I am too. Let's do
Okay,
it.
Megan, what do you got going on?
Oh, I do have something going on. I just recorded a new episode of A Moment with Meg.
That's cool. Who is it with?
Yeah. It's with Mike Horn from Sea Wind of Battery, one of our favorite musicians here on the pod, friend of the pod, and just overall awesome person. I got to go to his rehearsal space in Williamsburg, and it was really cool just to see this place where he has all of these instruments and all of his cool stuff. And we got to talk a lot about what inspires him and how he started making ambient music and how he looks for melody in his music and just some really awesome stuff. And it was really fun. And I hope people check it out. It's on my Instagram. It's also on Osiris YouTube.
He has
Congrats.
created 2 of my favorite albums of the last 5 years, and I highly, highly recommend people check out his music as well as your interview with him. That's incredible.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
music's so special.
Good work, Meg.
Thanks.
Okay, 2 more things. Number 1, I'm going to tell you guys how to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Okay, so you can go to Apple Podcasts. You can do it on a browser or on the app, and then search HF Pod. Okay, everyone with me so far? All you have to do is go down and click on write a review. Give it 1 sentence. 5 stars. Love these guys. We haven't had a new one in a month or so. I know you guys are listening. I know you like it. I know you like hanging out with us. So
Please.
just go ahead and give us a review. It helps us out.
4 stars would give it a 5-star if Brian won more drafts.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
could just say like 5 stars. I love how Meg wins all the drafts. Like something like
Yeah.
that. It's like super easy, just really quick.
Yeah,
Something like
5
that.
stars. It's great that you don't read the set list every time you mention a show. Great. Keeps it moving. Okay, sorry. Last thing I want to mention before we get into our new series. So I've started to think about going down to this Viva El Ganzo in Mexico. And I started looking at it, and I felt like we should probably just talk about it on the podcast, because everyone knows it's 3 nights of Goose, but this lineup is awesome. And I just want more people to I want people to go, because I'm like, now once I started looking at it, and I'm thinking okay, so there's 3 nights of Goose, War on Drugs, Dawes, Dogs in a Pile, Eggy. I mean, that alone for a 3-day show is pretty sweet. I mean, just the War on Drugs
Yeah.
playing there with Goose is just awesome. So
That's
anyway,
so
I'm starting to
sick.
get excited about this potential trip that I might take. So I just wanted to tell people to check it out, because I think it seems pretty awesome to me.
When is it, RJ?
Good question. May 8th.
It's
through 10th.
in May. In May.
Yeah, I should have said that. That's a good idea.
That's gonna be amazing.
Yeah,
I'll be jealous.
can do
I
it.
would really, really like, regardless if you go or not, I would really, really like Adam Grandishiel to hang out with Rick and Peter and be like, you guys ever hear this effect? You guys ever hear this synthesizer? And Rick to continue to expand his pedal board and to continue to explore 80s Heartland rock and
Mm.
I'm guessing he's
Yes.
heard the album Tunnel of Love, but I would really like for Rick to be like, hey, maybe instead of us covering some lame movie for Halloween, let's just cover Tunnel of Love because it's right in our wheelhouse. And I would love for Peter to be like, I need 17 more synthesizers.
Yeah.
Because like we need to just like expand the space and noise of this sound. Like there's such a crossover appeal between those two bands that I just want that time shared together to be productive. If you go and have a great time in the sun, I'm happy. I just want whatever happened in February in Goose to not be the end of Goose going forward.
Would Rick
It's a
have
good
to start
ask.
wearing a bolo tie, Brian, if he started getting like into 80s Springsteen?
I mean, you know, I am totally fine with the crystal he's wearing. I think a bolo tie would look better. I
But
think
that was
so-
Jeff's thing. Jeff is a bolo tie guy.
True.
Who?
True.
Yeah.
I think Rick needs an upgrade on his shoes. First and foremost, if he's going to wear bolo ties, you can't really do that with a giant pair of red Chuck Taylors.
Wow.
There's a lot of
You
opportunity.
really
here,
thought
guys.
about this.
I mean, you,
I
you
have.
really have.
There's a lot of
you
opportunity
could.
here.
I think Rick, I'm less into the like ripped shirt look that he has. Like that, I've never really been into that. And he does it a lot. And I know he's kind of into like the werewolf thing, but I just think that's a look that I'm willing for him to move away from.
Just regardless what Rick looks like, okay, I'm gonna keep going to the shows to look at him. Like, listen to the Bruce Springsteen song "Tougher Than the Rest" and hear the gated drums
Yeah.
and hear the
Yeah, Goose would kill that. Yeah.
wah, and think like, oh my God, Goose should cover this song. This would be a
Totally.
great cover for Goose.
It would be. It
It
would
would
be.
be.
Okay. So that's enough of that. All right. So we're starting a new series. First of all, before we start, we just have to talk about how awesome Brian Brinkman is for helping us organize this project. Don't you think, Meg?
Yeah, it was amazing. And you made it easy on me. You made my life so much easier by going through and choosing which versions were the top. I think there's 28 or something of these bathtub gins. And Brian curated them for us and made the list for us and put them in chronological order so we could listen to all of these bathtub gins in order. And I really appreciate it, sincerely. It's been exciting and fun. And it's made our lives easier, which, you know, is impressive, especially coming after some sour feelings about the draft. But you still like wanted to help us out. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, let's just continue belittling people's feelings about drafts. That's a great way to start a whole new series, Meg. I
I'm
really
not
I said
appreciate
at the
belittling
it.
you.
beginning that
I'm
you're
just-
all
I'm just
winners. I
saying
said
that-
everybody's a winner. What else do you need to know? Come on.
Sour feelings in quotes. My God. You're welcome. Let's talk about this series. We are launching a brand new series. This is our third series that we've launched since the, what would you call it? The rebrand, the reassessment of HF Pod post COVID.
Reassessment's a little strong, but
Yeah, we didn't reassess anything.
Realignment,
Realignment.
Renaissance. I don't know what you want to say.
The Renaissance, the HF Pod Renaissance era. I love
You
it.
like
The
that?
Enlightenment era. We did 40 for 40 in 2023. We did top 25 tours last year. This, as we have explained, will be an ongoing series. We don't have an end date in sight. We have a list of songs that we are planning to get through over the next year and change. We'll see how long it goes, because we have other series that we want to get to as well. But this one we're going to focus on for a while. The goal of this series is not so much competition. It is definition of what do these fish songs, these great fish songs, mean in the larger realm of fish history. And so I think that with that in mind, it's going to be a very interesting episode by episode march through. We are going to, how do I not overcomplicate this? We have come up with a list of what we believe are the defining fish songs. Okay. We are open to adding more fish songs if, as we get to through the list and you say, where's this song? Well, we can examine it. It's a 50 song cutoff. There have to be jam charted versions of this song for us to discuss it. But the goal here, we take each of these songs and then we go through both the jam chart as well as live bait releases. And we come up with a long list of great versions of these songs. which going forward, you, the voters, will be voting based off of that long list. Okay.
Mhm.
So no more of like 175 versions of a specific song. You will be voting off of that long list. And then on a rotational basis, each episode, one host is tasked with coming up with the Mount Rushmore and defending it and providing reasons for why they're using why they selected those songs. And at the very end of the episode, we'll hear from the other co-hosts where their Mount Rushmore differs or aligns, and we'll talk about that. It'll be a great conversation, a great discussion. And then you, the listener, will share some of your Mount Rushmores. Perhaps there's an outlandish one that we're like, what the hell? You picked those songs? And then we get to talk about it like that, really condescendingly in a loving way. But there may be others who have a Mount Rushmore that were like, whoa, I never would have put those 4 versions together. How cool. What a smart listener you are. So take the risk. Tell us what your 4 favorite versions of each songs are. And you can play along with us and we can have a ongoing conversation. We want voicemails that come in that defend your Mount Rushmore versions, that make fun of our Mount Rushmore versions. None of this is canon. We are not saying that these are the defined 4 versions you must hear, but to us as a podcast, this is what we are presenting to the world as the 4 preeminent versions of the best Fish songs that have ever been written. Did I get that right, RJ? Is there anything I missed?
Well done,
No, that was
Brian.
perfect. I want to say there was a nice discussion on Blue Sky involving some real serious Fish fan royalty. Let me tell you, we had Drew weighing in, Chop, Charlie Dirksen. People were, I can tell that the series is going to be good because people had some serious takes. But Brian, as we go into Bathtub Gin and start talking about it, do you have your own? I guess, do we have an aligned version of what we're looking for? Because are we talking about? I mean, Mount Rushmore is, as we kind of talked about last week, in as a comparison, sort of like for the most important 4 presidents. I don't know, maybe up to a certain point. I mean, so I guess what I'm asking is, there's a version from '93 that we're going to talk about that I think the band has talked about a lot, and that like is part of Fish lore, right? So whether or not I think that version of Bathtub Gin is great or not, that the consideration is importance to the band and to the history and to the understanding of the evolution of the song. Is that how you would put it?
That is 100% how I put this, and how I created my own list is because there are like when you get down to 4 versions, especially songs like Bathtub Gin or no spoilers, but we'll cover You Enjoy Myself at some point. We'll cover Tweezer at some point. We'll cover Disease at some point. There are certain Fish songs that when they start, regardless what is played, the audience reacts as though it's the best thing that they've ever heard. And that's kind of by design. There are other songs that we have on here that have lesser high quality versions, but are still beloved for various reasons. So I say all that contextually because it is damn near impossible to create a like my Mount Rushmore of Bathtub Gin is the same as yours, is the same as someone else's. So it's all about that base level of, did these versions, in my interpretation, in your interpretation, define kind of where the band was at, push the band forward, and really like signify what this song means overall in Fish history. So there's like a looseness to that criteria. I think that we want that sort of individual interpretation. I think that's where it's going to get really interesting, is like Meg may come with a certain song approach that I don't particularly have. And so her versions may not align entirely with mine, but that's where kind of like the conversation of like, what is important? What does define this band as they move forward? We're always in those discussions as it is. This is just another way to frame that around the idea of individual songs that I would say in all cases, when these songs begin, there is a elevated moment in a Fish crowd when they're played.
I looked at it a little differently because I thought about the importance historically. Like, I wanted to have a list that was varied and kind of traveled through time, but I also had a hard time not just choosing my favorites, like the ones from those times that I love the most. And so I am kind of wavering on where I'm going to land with my 4, because I have 7 that I think are like phenomenal, like my favorite versions. And it's hard to kind of narrow that down. So I'm just being honest about where I came down with that, because there is so much of, yeah, like the earlier ones are so different than the later gens. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see what you picked, Brian, and how that landed for you.
Yeah, and I also just want to say, so Brian is going to pick is going to be the official selector of Mount Rushmore for Bathtub Gin, which does take a little bit of the pressure off of me and Meg, because I can
Mhm.
say something that's going to make some people angry, but it won't be part of the official record. So Brian's
Exactly.
got the hard job here. But before we do that, Meg, do you want to tell us about Bathtub Gin for those who maybe have not heard the song or don't know what it is?
Yeah, well, even if you do know what the song is, I think this is kind of a nice thing to think about. It was fun to look back on. The music is by Trey, but the lyrics are by his friend Susanna Goodman, and the opening piano echoes Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. This song is on Lawn Boy. So the album debut was in 1990, but the live debut was in May 26th of 1989 in Rutland, Vermont at the Valley Club Cafe. And I think it's really fun to think about the journey this song took. You've got some really important early versions that have from 1991 with the giant country horns. And then I think it was also a really important part of the shift in August 1993, which was our top tour number 5. And then there are some really incredible years for Gin. I think 94 was less impactful, but came roaring back in 95. We've got some unbelievable Gins from 97 to 2000, and then some 2.0 Gins that just blow the roof off of everything, and some great Gins in 3.0 too. So it kind of runs the gamut of, we've got some really good Gins throughout all of Fish's career, and they've played it 315 times, and it's been on the Jam chart 103 times. So really good Jam chart, a third of the time played. Pretty crazy.
So I think that I think that I said, I don't know, this might have been where this like came from, because we were having a conversation about Bathtub Gin last year at some point about some show, and I can't remember what it was, but I think I've said before that hey Jackson says, please bath-splain gin to me, Meg. This is like, I think I've said on the podcast, this is the perfect jam vehicle. Like, I think it is, because I think it, like, in going back to these, and Brian, I don't know what you think, but like, this reinforced to me that it's like, this song is a perfect way to look at the sound of a tour. Like, you look at Fall 95, Fall 97, Summer 03, Summer 15, for example, like, and those, they just all reflect exactly where the band was at that time during that tour, which I think is really cool. I wonder if we'll feel the same way about other jam vehicles that we go through for this series.
So I think that I agree in large part to a lot of what you said. I think that this is in the rarest of the rare categories of, there's not a person in the venue that kind of scoffs when they start playing this song. Everyone reacts like Bathtub Gin starts no matter what. It could open a set. It could be your 4th song of the set. It could be towards the set closer. It could be somewhere in set 2. Wherever it is, everybody is happy. And one of the great things about going through the long list that we had of Bathtub Gins is that a lot of these versions are kind of like scattered throughout the overall show. And so you hear that end of first set energy that everybody has, and Bathtub Gin starts and suddenly people are just like losing their minds, or it opens set 2 a little bit slower, a little bit like a kind of gnarly manner, and people are ready to go deep in set 2. There's even crazy versions that segue out of other songs, especially here in the 3.0 4.0 era, late in the second set, that you would never expect. It's kind of one of those songs that no matter where it drops, everybody is happy, everybody is on board. I think that your point about it being a bellwether is pretty accurate overall. I think the one difference The one nit I would pick is this was one of those, and maybe this does actually agree with what you're saying, but this was one of those songs that in early 3.0, when type 2 jamming was a big challenge for the band in a lot of areas, Bathtub Gin was one of those old reliables that even if it just stayed in the type 1, type 1.5 hose jamming space, it delivered the goods. And so no matter what qualms you had with where the band was at in '09 through 12, you were guaranteed to have a killer 12 to 14 minute Bathtub Gin delivered kind of on a silver platter at any point during the show.
Yeah, it's one of the moments that I really like kind of got. I mean, I came back in '09 and started going to shows right away. I think I saw like 11 shows that year, which was insane. But there's a moment at Meriwether Post in 2012, I think, maybe 2011, where it was like the show was totally fine. And I have a picture of it on a canvas in my living room because it's the lights are really cool. But I just remember like hearing that the jam was so great and so very much type 1, but like brought this feeling of energy and enthusiasm. It just like really like it was probably the highlight of the show, which I think is just a funny thing because these days it takes a lot for a Bathtub Gin to be the star of the show. But I think you're right in that sense because it always lifts everyone's spirits and no one's ever going to be like, not Bathtub Gin again.
Well, and it's an interesting point because, like, if I look through the long list, the latest versions that we have are from 4/18/23 and 2/24/24 on the long list. And those two versions kind of speak to this evolution the band has gone under in 4.0, where a jam can happen at any point during a show. Both of those are first set Bathtub Gins. Both of those expand on the larger themes of the song. They explore some, different terrain, but then they come back and they peak towards the end. So it almost works as kind of like and I say this in the complimentary way, like a bloated version of an early 3.0 jam, where it's stretched out over 20 minutes, but still delivers that same infectious groove, hose riffing from Trey, big old peak where the white lights are up and everyone's just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done in my entire life. That's kind of the purpose of Bathtub Gin. And to dedicated listener who's here with us, this is pod number 2 of the day for us. We recorded Library Card just earlier. Foreman 777 was hanging with us at Library Card. He's now here from Mount Rushmore. Notes that this is a great way to kick off the series as well. I think that we knew going into this series, the first song is Bathtub Gin. Can I say something though contradictory here about Bathtub Gin? I feel like we need a full.
And then I have something I want to say to what you just said.
I want you to contradict yourself. And
go ahead, Bri.
Then go to Megan and she'll contradict me. Like let's just keep it going.
Keep it going.
Is that what we do here? Like we just like talk. Okay.
Yeah.
One person to the other person. Cool. That's the way this works. I think that this is, when you think about Bathtub Gin, especially in its early stages, especially on Lawn Boy, this is kind of the sound everyone who hates jam bands thinks of. It's this kind of like dopey, clumsy, jangly, slacker groove. Like I imagine like early 90s dudes in like a Mad Hatter hat, striped shirts, checkered shorts, Chuck Taylor's. Like there's like that character in every early 90s like slacker film where it's just like that guy's name is like Bozo, and like he just like dances around in like weird clothes that don't match together, and like that is Bathtub Gin. Devil Sticks, incredible perp here, circus
Devil
music,
Sticks.
Got a hacky sack. Totally.
Like this.
Oh my God.
Like if you play
got
this
like one of those
someone,
like floppy hats, like the like patchwork floppy hat.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And we're saying this with love, but like that is the caricature that a lot of people who don't get jam bands think of when they think of jam bands. And it's probably like okay, I'm not touching that music. Like get away from me. And I feel like Bathtub Gin kind of embodies that. And so I would not necessarily recommend using Bathtub Gin as your entry song for a non-Fish fan to be like, you got to check this band out, because it's a lot of like and then it gets awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I really thought
to
about
me, when I was
Fair.
thinking about this song, I was thinking about how its kind of roots come from a lot of like jazz standards, like American songbook, like Gershwin and Arlen's, like It's Only a Paper Moon, and Cole Porter and Duke Ellington. It has this like jazzy American songbook kind of like Broadway-ish feeling to it. And it's narrative and it's kind of silly, and it has that big, it's got the big like sing along line to it that everybody sings. Like, I'm not going to say who this is because it's just such a call out, but I have a friend who is not into Fish, and she was telling me that she has the worst memories of this song because the first guy she ever had sex with was like in her dorm room and he was playing this song. And she was like, this song? Like, I have to listen to this song while I have sex for the first time? Like, it's fucking horrible. So, like,
Yeah,
I think,
no.
I think there's like, I
Oh,
do.
jeez.
I can't wait to tell her I talked about this in public. Oh, she's going to be horrified. But I think there is like, there's something so fishy about this song, and so
Yeah.
like you can only really like it if you're a Fish fan. So I agree with what you're saying, Brian. And I think what was really cool about listening to it historically in chronological order was realizing that at the beginning, like the jams are generally speaking really fluid, really like forward moving, really kind of horizontal, propulsive, really sunny, optimistic, like give Trey that perfect like launching pad for Hose, just really kind of, always climbs to this big massive triumphant peak. And I think about now where Fish likes to go with their jamming, and it's so different from that. And I think it's so much more vertical and exploratory, and it's really cool when Gin goes that way, especially in 2.0, like watching it stretch out like that is so exciting when you get to that point in the listening. But it really is, for most of these jams, they are kind of really forward moving, that same kind of, like you're saying, Brian, it's just moving towards one thing, really sunny, really within the confines of Gin. Even when it stretches out a little bit, they're more type 1 than not.
Yeah.
Okay, so the way this is going to work is that we are going to talk about Brian's first two versions. We're going to talk about them in depth, and then we'll take a break, and then we're going to come back for the second two versions, and then toward the end we have a section that I'm calling the others, which in this case is going to be me and Meg and the listeners.
The others. Ooh. Oh, before we go, can I say one
Yeah.
more thing that I
Yeah,
forgot?
please.
That I was thinking about this song also. It's so narrative, and I do think there's a direct line to a song like What's Going Through Your Mind from Bathtub Gin. Because it's like a more sophisticated version of Bathtub Gin. It's like this big narrative story that is going to become a huge jam vehicle for the band. And I found that to be like, that's kind of like their updated version of it. Like this big, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about.
Very interesting.
Tom always talked about Shade being the grown-up waste. What's going through your mind is the grown-up Bathtub Gin. You heard it here first. I definitely get what you're saying, because like when you hear Bathtub Gin, you're like inserted into the party. And
Yeah.
you can like look around and see what everyone's doing. And I think that you get that from What's Going Through Your Mind as well, just a slightly different substances.
Yeah. And What's Going Through Your Mind is like, the middle-aged, like fucked up relationship version. And Bathtub Gin is like the, childlike, whimsical version of that.
So, okay, Brian, are you comfortable? Are you ready? Are you ready to give us your first we got to get this, we got to get the masons ready, people are going to start
Chiseling away.
start scaling the wall and etching
Brinkman
it,
is so ready. He's so ready.
Comfortable, no. Ready, yes. I'll say if you take any issue with what I say over the next 40 minutes or so, hit me up on
Wait,
Twitter.
this is just for the first one?
No, I'm saying about all of them.
Okay, that
right.
says he's going to be done in 40 minutes. Let's see.
So do you want me to start?
Let's go.
Go.
I'm so curious.
All right.
I'm ready.
All right. So version number 1 that we are going to chisel into the rock in
Gamehenge.
Western South Dakota. Yeah, in Western Gamehenge. This is what I believe is the most formative Fish jam of all time. And I think that this also showcases everything that Bathtub Gin could be. And it is one of the rare circumstances where one of the best versions, one of the best type 2 versions of a song was one of the first ones, one of the early ones. I think a lot of the big jam vehicles we're going to talk about, they kind of developed over time. They had a couple years of learning. This is none other than the August 13th, 1993 version, the Marat Gin, as it's called. This, to me, it is as foundational as you can get with fish jamming. We talked a lot about August 93 last summer, or last year when we were doing our top 25 tours episode. That was ranked, I think, number 5, mainly because of the foundation setting in fish history. And you hear it across that entire tour. No place better than in the Marat Gin. This enters into the show about 3 or 4 songs into the second set, and just when it goes, it goes. And the band briefly returns to Bathtub Gin, but then continues to go out even further. And it really showcases, this kind of yes and jamming that was really popular for the band and was really effective for them in 1993. But it also combines a really incessant groove that will become a huge hallmark of Bathtub Gins over the next few years. This is going to be one of those songs that they really lean into as groove becomes more of a centerpiece. But then it also goes to the top of the mountain, and it has the peak that you're looking for, the release that you're looking for. This, for me, the Kinks, surf rock all come to mind when I listen to this, and it really sounds in the same sort of manner as like 60s garage rock was so foundational to punk, to grunge, to where we're at with rock music today. You get that same sort of comparison with the Marat Gin to where Fish would go post August 1993. So my submission for our George Washington, if you will, I'm not going to do that every time, but our founding father of founding fathers, Bathtub Gin versions, is August 13th, 1993. I will leave it to you. Tell me your thoughts about this. I don't know if we're going to get into agree or disagree, but tell me your thoughts about this.
Well, I have some thoughts, but Meg, why don't you go first?
Yeah, it's such an important jam. I think the way that it weaves in and out throughout with melody, I think it's so careening and fun. It's so playful. It goes totally off the rails. I just love that part when Trey's like, Leo,
Yeah.
Leo, and he brings him in on the organ. Like I love that like 90s Fish vibe when they're just having so much fun. And that point when after Trey's yelling and they're all kind of yelling, and then Mike lays down that just like super melodic bass line. It's just, and then they have that incredible segue into Yamar. This is an incredible version and really important to have, I think, chiseled on the rock.
I agree, and I don't disagree with this. I think what I was alluding to earlier, I think this has to be there because I think it was brought up in our kind of social media discussions that it's been mentioned by the band. It's been like they basically chose this already, so we can't really argue with them. But I think my only slight argument at this stage would be that, and this goes for a lot of 93, but it's really just adding jams from other songs onto Bathtub Gin. Like,
yeah, they've got
there's
the
a
Week of
section of
Pug
it
in
is like a
there.
Week of
Yeah.
Pug, and then there, and it's awesome. There's a great peak. The Leo thing is great. The transition into Yamar is perfect. I mean, a lot of these early in the 93 era, especially, it was just like you said, Brian. It's more of like a band practice kind of thing, But when I
Yeah.
listen back to it and listen to all these in order, I'm like, it's not as impressive to me in that way of listening, because I do think there's not a lot of original ideas there. It's like it's kind of bringing things from different parts of their jamming or their different parts of their songs into a jam. So that would be my only gripe with this, but I don't
It's kind
actually
of like
have one.
it's kind of like how we were talking about with top 25 tours, in that like, sometimes tours are on there because of how important they were for the band moving forward. So I think in that frame and lens, this is definitely one of those jams.
That is kind of where my head is at. I think that you're right, RJ, and I think it almost works in a similar sense to the Alpine Ruby Waves from 2019, which I
Mm,
think in the moment we were all like, "Oh my God, they played a 38-minute long jam, all these different segments." You listen back now from 6 years, there are some great moments, but on the whole, that feels like an exercise. I think that you get that here. I think that the question I kept coming back to when I was considering this list, um, because the way I did this was I listened through everything and I would kind of pin jams to re-listen to and
mhm.
say, okay, this initially feels like a top 4 version, but I don't want to get ahead of myself and suddenly have 8 versions. So I had kind of tiers to get to the top 4, and this made it through the first round. And what I kept coming back to is, without this version of Bathtub Gin, where is Fish? And you could make the argument, sure, there's another version out there. But I think there's a very direct through line from the Marat Gin, the following night's Antelope, the Mike song from 12/30/93, the Bomb Factory Tweezer, What Happened in November, and then the Providence David Bowie, which is the thread I'm trying to draw to fully bring RJ over to my side here.
Yeah.
Um, but like there are these like stepping stones that happened between August 93 and the end of 1994, where they were then able to come back in 95 with this full freedom to do whatever they wanted. And I think in a lot of ways, and I've listened through, as we all three of us have, the entirety of 92, the entirety of 93, there are moments, there are hints. There's nothing like when they get to this Bathtub Gin on August 13th before that. Like nothing that really kind of is a demarcation one way or the other of where this band is going to go. And so I think you're right. There are a lot of like this song idea and then this song idea, and then we go here and wow, it's like we're on a roller coaster. It's like, it's kind of silly at times, but without that, where are we at? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I think that like, we talk about that a lot on the show, right? It's like,
Mhm.
is everything that important that happened, a necessary precursor to the next thing that happened? I mean, based on how time works, yes. But like, would the Antelope from the next night be this if this wasn't this? So, I mean, or maybe they find something different. But I mean, I have no problem with this being on the top 4. I think it has to be.
But I
I
think
think we're
also
like
what you're saying is
obligated to.
it's not one of the best versions. It's an important version. I mean, it's a great version, but I think like I like other versions better than this version. I like 4 other versions better than this version, but I feel like it's important to have it in it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting. Let me jump to the next one so that I'm not like beating around the bush here. But I made a pretty significant decision with the next version and getting from this
That's what I'm
to the
talking about.
next one.
Mhm. Significant decisions.
Yeah,
Significant
that's what we're
decisions.
here for.
And by selecting this one, because these are in chronological order, okay?
Yeah.
By
Okay.
selecting this one, I have skipped over 1, 2 versions that I would argue are better than the Marat Gin. I
Yeah.
enjoy more. I will listen to and I will reach for more.
Interesting.
But when I was listening through and trying to decide definitive versions, I felt as though the version I'm about to select is kind of the next step up from the Marat Gin, and the ones that I enjoyed in between are kind of figuring out the pieces. So
Mhm.
I um I skipped over 2 versions I love, one of which is 12/5/95 and the
Love that
other
version.
of which is 11/7/96. Those are not on my Mount Rushmore.
Wow.
Now, 11/7/96 I know is going to take a lot of heat, and I know that a version I have later to select is going to be probably the first one to get, take that off and put this on. But before I get crucified here, I think that what the Rupp Gin does is expand upon and build upon a lot of ideas that were introduced in the Murat Gin 3 years prior, and doesn't do a ton more. It's really great. It's really long, but if we're being honest, it is a precursor to 1997 funk groove jamming. It's something that happens in 1997 that is unquestionably one of the greatest things. I'm just seeing the chat fill up as I'm trying to talk. And I'm trying not to look at it right now. I'll look at you guys here in a sec. The version from 1997 that I did select, I think, is the preeminent example of Hose and of this band connecting around melody and around a very specific theme, and perhaps the greatest version of that in any aspect of their category of their entire catalog. And that is the Went Gin, August 17th, 1997. This is gorgeous, fluid riffing. It builds with emotional perfection. It has that peak. Every single time you hear that peak, you smile. You feel like your blood boiling in the best way possible. You feel tingly. It's the best. It's the absolute best. My musical comparison to this, are you guys ready for this? This is about as hyperbolic as I've ever gotten, but you know what? I couldn't move away from this. Are you ready for this, RJ? Are you ready for this?
I mean, I'm ready. I'm sure. Born ready.
This is Fish channeling Beethoven. This is
Wow.
as like romantic. This is as melodic. This is as epic. There are a lot of versions like the Went Gin. There are no versions that are the Went Gin other than the Went Gin.
You know, I did not expect this from Brian Analytical Dark Music Brinkman, honestly. I did not expect this to end up on the top 4. I sent you guys my notes from this.
Well, I'm a historian. I know I can remove bias.
But this is just this version is Trey just riding the wave. He's just riding the wave.
God, yeah.
And then I mean, I sent you guys my notes where I said until he hits that note, oh my fucking God, all caps. And like that, just that galloping riff. I mean, and the cool thing about it, and maybe this is where you get the comparison with like a classical piece, is there's like a resolution that you're waiting for, but they wait, you know, and it's not at the end of the whatever it is, however many measures it is, they keep kind of delaying the resolution of it, and that just makes it even more powerful. It's amazing.
Yeah, amazing. It's to me one of the most optimistic, hopeful, romantic pieces the band has ever played. I think when Paige comes in on the piano, like 9 minutes in, and Trey's playing those like optimistic chords, it's jaw dropping. It's so beautiful, and I love how this is not related to the song, but I thought this was beautiful on the Live Bait Volume 5 that it's on. Afterwards, you know, it kind of has that like there's such a come down after the peak, and then they just fade into the Brad Sands announcement. And it's so like, it's fucking awesome. Like that was such a smart thing to do on the Live Bait. Like it just has such a, I don't know. I love that. Every time I listen to it, I always wait and listen to that too. Cause it sounds really beautiful, but yeah, I think this has to be on it. It's beautiful.
One thing I want to address, Kevin Barry in the comments made a very, I think, accurate comment here. You know, and this kind of aligns with these two versions for me. He said Murat Gin is certainly a foundational gin, but it's so schizophrenic, it's anxiety inducing and has no groove. I don't disagree with that. I think that there's a little more groove than he's giving it credit for, but I think it is anxiety inducing. I think that part of why I have these two versions is I think at its best, gin is kind of anxiety inducing. And there are some great
Yeah.
versions that like they're so fast, they're so frenetic, the band is so locked in that if you're just wandering into your first Fish show, you're like, what the like how are they playing so fast? What is going on? How are people trying to dance to this type of music? And I think you get this yin and yang between these two where Marat is kind of this side of Gin where like the second they leave the song, Page goes to the clav, Fishman increases the pace of the beat, Mike and Trey follow, and like Trey's just playing as quickly as possible. And then the Went Gin is this more languid, emotional, romantic. We've thrown that word around, like that feel that you get. It's not very cerebral in the way that some of these other jams are. It's all about the feel.
Which is like so great because it's also in summer 97, right? Which is just it's the funk moment. And one of my favorite gins is just a few weeks earlier. And to know that like they're playing these really funky bathtub gins and then they just go off and play this just fucking gorgeous one. It's blissy. It's so cool to see them messing with form like that in a time that's has a very definitive sound.
Well, and that was another thing for me is when I think about 93, what does the Marat Gin say about 93 Fish? They're willing to try anything. They can push against the grain. Even if it doesn't work, they're just willing to try it. But
And they're
then in
silly and
97,
they're
they're
playful.
silly. But then in 97, you're absolutely right. That like, what do we think of when we think of summer 97? It's this very angular, kind of dark, dystopian funk jamming. You almost think of like the gumbo from Phoenix. And this gin is nothing like any of
I
that.
know.
And it, to me, makes me think, well, of course, we revere 97 because they can play anything. Like, no
Yeah.
matter what style they're dedicated to, they can play this Went Gin literally minutes after closing out one of the weirdest, abnormal down with diseases that you could ever imagine. And then minutes before they're going to play a stretched out, late night seedy groove in 2001, and then they're going to kind of reprise the emotional peak of Gin in Harry Hood. Like they're tossing between all of these different styles in a way that just defines 97.
I don't know if we're
Yeah.
going to talk about like tiny versions like that, but I did just want to say, because it probably won't be mentioned, but the 12/5/95 really stood out to me when I was listening to it, just because it's so narrative and the fluidity of it really is like the earlier versions are just not like that. And it just has that 95 swagger, but the transitions in that jam are just amazing.
Meg,
I
you have
think
no
this
idea
is
how much it pained me to eliminate that version. I'm right
It's
there.
really good. It's really,
you
really
had to
good.
do it.
You had
Tough
to do it. I
choices,
agree.
guys. These are tough choices, tough times. Not everyone can get on Mount Rushmore. That's the whole idea.
No, it's the whole
If
deal
everyone
of
could
it.
get on Mount Rushmore, the whole mountain would be gone. You just have everyone's face. You have to look at, James Garfield as you drive by. All right, Brian, I said on Blue
Tragic
Sky the other
figure in
day.
American history.
Yeah, definitely. I said on Blue Sky the other day during this heated debate that might be the most blissful 2 minutes in all of Fish. I didn't think about it before I said it, but then after I said it, I decided that I believed it. And
Double down.
I'm wondering if either of you have any brief other contenders for that particular award.
Well, I have to hold one back because it's not being included, and I have to include it in context in the next segment. But I will say one of the questions here that we have for ourselves are there any versions around these jams that kind of hint to where the band was going with this song? And as Meg just astutely pointed out, there's really no similar Bathtub Gin in 1997 to this. However, if you jump ahead 25 months to September of 1999, there are two versions in particular. And I would even pull in, well, no, actually, I wouldn't. Sorry. There are two versions, edit that out. There are two versions in particular that really align with what the gin vibe is, one of which is 9/12/99 from Portland,
Mhm.
and the other is 9/22/99 from Las Cruces. And it's really interesting to me that the Went Gin was played in this dark, angular, funky 97 summer. By the fall of 1999, based on slow moving evolution, the new gear, the stage realignment, that blissy take us to heaven feel is a part of a lot of the jams, and those two gins really feel in a line with this bathtub gin. But to answer your most important question, no, I think that this is the like this could cure diseases. It is that joyful and blissy. Like if you listen to this and you're going through like a hard breakup or you're just like really depressed about the condition of the world, like just give yourself 15 minutes alone, put this on, throw some headphones on. You're going to walk out somewhat happier than you walked into that room. Like it just has that impact.
Well, and it's a different, like to me, the only thing I think of whenever I think of like my favorite 2 minutes of Fish is like 12:30:19, but it's that's such a different blissy. That's a spacey floating bliss. This is like more of like a building crescendo bliss. So to me, they're just very different.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
we really need that 9/22/99 archivally released because you lose so much of the clarity in the odds with that, and it's so pretty.
Some great comments here from our listener, Ed, EDD, more blissful 2 minutes. I don't know if he's saying that these are more blissful or if just like
Just
more
like
blissful
additional.
options. I'm going to go with additional here. 12/7/99 Haley's, mid part of the 2/28/03 tweezer, the big riff in the 12/16/99 tweezer, the end of the 7/2/97 stash. I think those are great comps. I think that that's a great, like, if you love this gin, where do you go next? I'm a bit of a simpleton when it comes to this. The first time I heard the Went Gin, someone told me it's the greatest music that has ever been played, and I believe them, and I still feel that to this day.
Well, I just want to say that the only other contender I'd put on this level would be the peak at the 12/29/94 Bowie, which is a reaching of ecstasy that is hard to top. So that would be my.
I think I'd put
I would
the
throw that in there.
7/10/99 Camden as well.
Yeah.
How about that? How do you feel about
Yeah.
that? You know,
Mhm.
Great.
Meg's like,
Great.
it's blissful until they go into Roguet, and then I just can't. And I'm like, Meg, I'm sorry you don't like Roguet, but we're not talking about Roguet
I
today.
don't.
We're not.
I don't like it.
But
Glad we're not talking about it. It's
we're
not
not
on
talking
the
about
Mount
it at all.
Rushmore, is it? It's definitely not going to go on. There's just
It is.
no.
It is. That's what we're going to
It's
pivot to right after we take this commercial break.
I hope not.
All right, Brian, you got to bring us back. Where are we going now? Where are we going
Okay.
now? Where are we going for the third? We're entering a new era of some
This
kind.
is exciting.
All right, so we did our first two. We did the Went Gin, or excuse me, we did the Marat Gin 8/13/93, and then the Went Gin 8/17/97. In my research for this segment, so much pressure, guys. I realized the best era for bathtub gin is probably mid to late 1995 to mid 2000. It's a 5-year stretch where you have the majority of the versions that are on our long list. A lot of variety, what we talked about here in terms of angular funk, groove, bliss, hose, massive developments forward. So I felt it important when building out this list to really highlight the diversity of this peak era. And I think that the Went Gin is the peak of the blissy late 90s gins. The ones that they did beyond this were kind of not a footnote, but they were addendums to this version. But what they also did was they explored type 2 terrain during this period in really significant and unique ways. And I think that there is no better version that explores type 2 jamming, infectious groove, and that just holy fuck vibe that you get when Bathtub Gin starts and takes liftoff than the show opening Riverport Gin from 7/29/1998. My two notes about this are: one, this much groove should be illegal, and that this is where the impact of the talking heads is best heard in Fish. Some would argue in the writing of Birds of a Feather, but I would argue in some of the jamming that they did that just feels in line with great Talking Head segments. You get that in this gin. There is so much funk, there is so much groove. It is relentless, and it just keeps like pouring onto you. And the idea that like this was the first song played in a show, which is something they experimented with in summer 98. There's a great version from 1 week earlier in Ventura. That's kind of the baby Riverport gin.
Mhm.
This just showcases a band that is in full command of the sound that they discovered on Halloween 1996, started incorporating into their sound, revolutionized their sound throughout 1998, played this stunning island tour run in early April, and then went on the road at a complete high from a confidence standpoint, fully locked in, zero pressure on themselves, just like ready to take over the world. And they play this version of Bathtub Gin that is one of my favorite jams of all time, and in line with kind of, you know, if the Went Gin gives you the where does Bathtub Gin, where can it go at its peak as a blissful peaking jam, this is kind of the peak of where can Bathtub Gin go when, you know, the training wheels are off and it's just ready to explore.
Yeah, this gin, to me, it's you jump on the back and you just ride this thing along and you watch the scenery fly by you. It's just completely so hypnotic to me. And this is the sickest funk groove. It's just so tight. This is definitely my shit. If
This
people would
is
like to
this
know.
is your shit. This is your
Yeah.
shit.
I know. I love this shit.
I have this as my, I think, number 6 jam, top jam of all time.
Yeah.
The highest ranked Bathtub Gin that I have on my top jams list. It's just there's something that's like, it's so, like you said, I think you said relentless, Brian. I mean, there's something about it that it just Fishman, first of all, like it just keeps it going forever. But there's about 7 minutes in, Trey starts hitting that like arpeggiated riff, and it's just like, it just feels like a launching pad. And then Trey is just on top of the jam the entire time. And then eventually they like slow it down, but then beyond the funk, there's like a driving jam at the end that kind of equals out the like bliss jam at the beginning with like this funk thing in the middle. And it feels like at like 20 minutes into it, they're hitting full speed again, but in a totally different way. I mean, it's an unbelievable adventure every time. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is the argument between are jams intentional or do they just happen organically? Because like this is how they start the show. Like they were just feeling it and they just went with it. Like how I like this is just them at the peak of their powers, capable of doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, we should tell them like you can start a show like this. It's fine. You can still do that. That's cool. Like just do it.
Should they have
Just
done
go.
this on night 4 of Mondegreen?
A good way to wrap a festival.
Great way to wrap up a festival. Come out and play like a 20-minute Bathtub Gin that just fucking delivers some sick funk.
Into Iculus.
Some Kung thrown in there. Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
So good. God, Brian, you're doing great so far. I'm really just proud
I know.
of this effort.
I have a guess for what the next one is too, and I'm excited to see if I'm right.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, Brian, it's back to you, man. This is you.
You're crushing this.
Just gotta appreciate our note taker for each episode. Forbin77 marks the Monda shade. We marked it in the episode. For those who are interested, we will have that in the show notes. Okay. So this is where it gets controversial. Sure, you might be able to pick some nits with Marat. I don't think anybody here is picking nits with Went or Riverport. But where we go after Riverport is interesting. Because one could argue, and I might even be this one to argue that there is a version from late 1.0 that it should absolutely be on this list for the speed, the tenacity, the ferocity of Trey's riffing. But it's not, because when I was compiling this, I felt as though two things. One, that version, Homedale 2000, 628 2000, an amazing version of Bathtub Gin, an amazing jam. Kevin Shapiro, if you're listening, we need a full box set release of 628 2000 to 74 2000. Insane stuff. I don't know if you've listened to it in 25 years. If you haven't, you should go back and check it out. It's amazing. All 6 shows are outstanding. That gin, whew. But when I was listening to that, I was like, you know what? This is a bit too in the Went gin frame. So this would be akin to having Adams, Madison, Monroe on Mount Rushmore along with Washington and Jefferson. So then I started thinking, okay, where do we go from there? And one of the stories that is important about this band and is important about some of the songs that we're going to be discussing throughout this series is that Phish has had a second life. They evolved, they grew, they challenged themselves further past the peak of the early 90s. A crazy concept that a lot of bands have never even attempted, and yet is, I would argue, as important, if not more important, than the successes of the mid 90s when they were young, flourishing, full of piss and vinegar, and capable of taking over the world. And so I was like, we need something that states where this band went. And Bathtub Gin, as we talked about at the top of this, evolved as well. And there's some amazing versions of Bathtub Gin that have happened over the last 25 years that could almost have their own like Mount Rushmore subset to them. You know, this would be akin to Mount Rushmore adding FDR, LBJ. It pains me to say this, but probably Ronald Reagan, Obama, you know, these presidents that have had massive impact on America and where America goes and where it has gone to, but maybe controversial because we're so close to their history. You know, nobody here really like talks about the executive overreach of Abraham Lincoln because we all just accept he did the right thing. He should have overreached. It was right. Nobody here is really picking nits about Teddy Roosevelt getting us into foreign wars because, hey, it expanded the empire and we were great. And he, you know, like none of you guys.
Am I the only one who knows where this is going? I think does everyone know where this is going? I love it. I don't want to interrupt, but I think this is just what a setup. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Really leaning into the Rushmore framework.
Yeah, if you know Brian Brinkman, he's definitely going to lean into the American history framework for sure.
Welcome to the new series. Okay, we figured out a way to combine my favorite things in the world. So with that said, I've selected a version that I expect to get some pushback. Okay. But this is my list. You guys can have your list. I'm not going to be coming at you with pitchforks when you come up with your list for the top song that we're doing next week. You know, it's you. That's your thing. To me, the other side of Bathtub Gin that is not totally told in the 90s versions is the darkness that emerges. Okay. And that darkness is seen in some excellent versions that have happened in the 21st century. Versions like August 7th, 2009, a deeply underrated show. 12/30/15, where Phish channels Wilco's Spider's Kid Smoke. The 2/24/24 Bathtub Gin that is just like hypnotic, dark, seedy groove. You're just finishing all your drugs before you get on the plane the next morning to fly back to America. But there's one version where all of these things come together in a musical kaleidoscope that I have yet to figure out what is happening, how they are doing this. And that is the 2/28/03 Bathtub Gin from Nassau Coliseum. One of the greatest shows that the band has ever played. And why is it one of the greatest shows that the band has ever played? Because they play top 5 versions of Bathtub Gin, Get Back on the Train, Tweezer, David Bowie. They bust out a Soul Shakedown Party. They bust out Destiny Unbound. All these massive things happen. One of those massive things that happens is the Bathtub Gin. And that Bathtub Gin, it's acidic, late night psych jazz. We're talking fish channeling 70s Miles Davis. We're talking fish channeling Tortoise of all things. We're talking fish taking the Victor disc, the greatest studio album that ever existed that has not been released or claimed in my draft for reasons that we will get into later.
Or not.
Or not. They channel that all into this gin. And not only that, but this version of Bathtub Gin is surrounded by epic versions. 21403 from LA, 22203 from Cincinnati, 7903, the set closing jazz fusion craziness from Shoreline. But in my estimation, none of those versions touch this 228 2003 gin from Nassau. I will pause. I will let you all compose yourselves, get yourselves together, and then let me know what your thoughts are.
I love this version. It's awesome. It's incredible fluidity, super dynamic. It never rests in one spot, but it still has that like gin feeling. It's still fluid, even though it's like kind of like going everywhere, but it just never feels disjointed. I think it's phenomenal. And Paige is so incredible in this jam. He is moving so adaptively from like piano to organ and back. And it's just, yeah, this is a really, really cool jam.
What a show. I mean, another show that maybe has many Mount Rushmore versions, as you alluded to, Brian. We'll see. We'll see in due time.
Right?
This is like kind of cliche, but the way that this builds is one of those jams that's like burned into my brain. Trey's like the descending chord riff that he does before they get into that groove is just like it's in my brain for the rest of my life, and that I think means that I like it a lot. Man,
the show is hard to turn off. Like
it really is.
When I put on the gin, I was like, I don't want to stop listening to this show. Like I'm just gonna keep going. It slowed me down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, amazing, simply amazing.
I love this version. As I've just spent 20 minutes telling you about. Like I said, there were versions from later that I was considering. I think it's very important to have a full picture of the band's history. So it does pain me slightly to not have a 3.0, 4.0 version where there are some really high quality versions. This is not to say the last great one. This is more like, FDR looking around and saying, well, we need one more. I'm not putting Jackson. I'm not putting McKinley. I'm definitely not putting Grant. Why don't I put my extended cousin, TR? Why don't we put him up there?
Let's put a Roosevelt up there.
Yeah,
let's get a Roosevelt up on the mountain. And so that's me, channeling that vibe here.
Well, there's been a couple questions in the chat about 22203 Cincinnati, which is a great version. By the way, we're going to start talking about this in a sec, but we did not. This was 228 is not on mine, but I think when you look at 220, 214, and 222, to me they're both just like their build up toward 228. So it's hard for me to evaluate them as their own thing when it feels like they're making a progression toward that 228, which I think is the peak. So for me, I would like put 228 above 222 or 214, but
I would as well.
222 is really good too.
Yeah, I agree. I would put it above it too.
222 is great. I think one of the negating aspects for me is that the deeply psychedelic segment at the back end too much aligns with the Bathtub Gin riff. Like they play the riff
carnival
and
version of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of like spin that out for a couple minutes. So I think it's an incredible version. I considered 7903 because I think it says something similar. I also just felt like, I can't get too cute. 7903 is a stunning version, but like when we're talking about Mount Rushmore, like there has to be some weight to the kind of larger cultural connection to a version. And I don't really know of a lot of people that talk about 7903. It's one of those deeply underrated fish jams that I think more people should listen to. But I think if you're going to compare that to 228 just has this like power. Maybe it's because the show was played at, maybe it's the version.
Maybe.
All right, Brian, you have constructed our first Mount Rushmore. Congratulations.
Well done. That's awesome.
We're good.
Um,
We're rolling, guys. We have a new series, you know,
We have a new
we're
series.
in it.
And
No.
you know what? I think now is an okay time to announce that if you're listening or watching, if you go to osirispod.com/Rushmore, you can start voting on the next episode. It's right now. So
Wow.
What's the next
song
episode,
is.
RJ?
Well, someone okay, I'll just tell you. We're going to Harry Hood. I mean, straight
Wow.
out the gate, we're
Just-
going.
I'm
It's
already
gonna be
there.
wild.
I'm already listening to, I'm sure Brian listened to it like 2 months ago, but I'm already in all day. I spent today in Harry Hood Bliss Peaks. It was fucking great.
Oh my God, what a better is there a better place to be? Not that I know of.
It was really nice. Yeah.
And I'm constructing it next week, so you guys better hold on to your hats because people are going to be mad at me because that's what happens. Okay, Megan, what did you have on your Mount Rushmore? And I guess at this point we can kind of focus on anything you had different, but tell us all
Yeah.
your 4.
Yeah, well, I had a very similar one until the very end. So I had the Morant Gin, the Went Gin, the Riverport Gin, and then I have Shoreline 7903. I love this jam, and it really stood out to me when I was listening back to it. It's so propulsive, it's super dancey, funky section. The rhythm section is just on lock. There's like a point that is just hitting so fucking hard, and then like Fishman comes in on the cowbell, and it's a little bit like, you know, the Will Ferrell skit from SNL. Like it's just like so hard. It's just like, but I like it. I'm here for that. I think it's just, it rocks so hard. And when I was listening to that part, and every time I've listened to it a few times, every time I was just like, fuck yeah, like I love that shit. And then it kind of dissipates, and there's just this patience to it, and the effects are so amazing, and they just end the set and like walk off while it's still like melting. Just like, yes. So that's my 4th version. And I
That's awesome.
was also a little pained, Brian, to not have like a full scope. Like I think not having like a 3.0, 4.0 was annoying to me, but none of those jams hit me the way that any of the earlier jams did. Like Magna Ball is obviously fucking amazing. Like you've got, I don't know, the Greek is great. I mean, you have a lot of great jams, but I think I really wanted the Shoreline one on there.
That
Which
that
I
has-
guess you won't be into, but I like it. Yeah.
it has that like electro rock groove. Like it's
Yeah,
classic
I love
Summer
it.
03. I mean, it's got like the tempo, Trey's tone. I mean, it's pushing really hard on that groove, and then that dissolving for a long time. It's cool. It's a good jam. I haven't gone back to that for a while. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I had 2 different ones from Brian. I did put the Rup Gin on there, and you know, this is a jam that for me has changed a lot over the years. Like I remember getting the tape because it was like, you know, on one side of the tape it was just Bathtub Gin, and you're like, the fuck, you know,
What?
like that was.
Yeah.
I mean, you had some of that in summer '95, but you don't see like the Bathtub Gin taking up a full side of a tape. So I remember like that, you know, and then I feel like over the years I've kind of like soured on it a little bit. But going back to this, I think there's like this, and we talked about this a lot. That Halloween, right? Like that kind of is the after Halloween
Yeah.
is the beginning of the next era. But there's so much interplay and so much communication, and in contrast to some of the 95 versions, it's like it's crisp and it's clear, and I think it's a result of like the Halloween prep and nailing those really tight songs. Like this I think
Mhm.
represents the next era, you know. And I think there's like this peak that is really fun, and then it kind of like goes into this percussion jam and then gets weird. But I feel like importance wise this was important to have there because of the kind of shift that I think it marks toward the next era.
I think that's a very fair point. I think you're right. Especially on the back end where it just gets into that like laconic groove. as it goes
Yeah.
into H1H2.
Yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
unique. That's a very new approach that they were taking.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe like a year from now I'll feel differently, but I felt like I had to be on there. And then because I can never get too much Bliss. I did put 628 2000 on there.
Yeah.
I
So what did
mean-
you have? What were your 4 that you had?
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. So I did not have 81393. So I have Rupp,
You got rid of them.
Went,
Mhm.
Riverport, and this 628 2000.
Nice. Yeah.
This is like, I mean, there's a huge peak. It's super celebratory. It's, there's a great riff in there and kind of propels everyone forward. It's huge. It's fun. It's celebratory. And in a tour where like, things were kind of unbalanced, so I felt like, I think that's just like a huge moment. And maybe like someone's going to tell me I'm wrong, but like one of the last jams of 1.0, really. One of the last big fun jams of 1.0.
Yeah, it touches on something that honestly they wouldn't really return to until early 3.0, which is this attempt of like a 13 to 15 minute type 1 Bliss peak jam. Like it's a very specific thing. I just want to comment that your new name is Our Jaded Bee, because you picked only jams between 96 and 2000. Like you're trying to mark yourself safe
Oh,
from Charlie Dirksen and Chop hate
Yeah.
right now.
Totally.
man.
Totally. You're stealing
That's
it
why
out.
I did it. That's why I did
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That moment though, when Trey soars and the crowd
Or
goes nuts.
Harry Hoods
pretty-
from Fall
pretty amazing.
94.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me share and by the way, if you're looking at Rushmore at osirispod.com/Rushmore and you see the Hood list, you are required to pick 4 versions, and then there's a separate question if you want to add one that's not on the list, and then there's a third question, which is if you want yours read off, put your name in there and we will
Oh, that's
read
fun.
a few.
Can I before we
Yeah.
move out of gin, can I just say one honorable mention for
Yeah.
one of my favorite gins of all time that is not a Mount Rushmore version, but it's so
Yeah.
intoxicating. It's the 72197 Virginia Beach, because it's just, to me, so like indicative of where they were right now, just of where they were at that moment, excuse me, like the way that they just come in and just open up, and it's so like, it just has so much joy in it, and it's just got those drown teases, and it's got that hopeful build, and then it has that James Brown funk. And when Trey like starts talking, and he talks for so long, and whenever Trey talks, it's so special, and he just kind of launches into it and explains all the new songs, and he's chanting like USA, happy to be back, and there's just such a triumphant feeling to that. And I have such an attendance bias from being there, but it's a moment I'll never forget when I was at the show, and every time I listen to it, it just hits so hard. So had to have a little honorable mention a la Brian Brinkman, more than 4,
Brian, thank you, Meg. I love that version. Paige's piano in that version, I think, is like the main thing that makes it like special. Like especially once they release the soundboard, it's so good. And Mike sounds so different on this tour, and you can like hear it in that version. It's like that's the thing about listening to these in chronological order. You just like go from
it's so cool.
96 and then you jump forward and you're like, wow, Mike sounds so different. Or the tempo in 03 is just like so different from 1.0.
93. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Brian, if you had one honorable mention that's just a personal pick, what would you add?
Just a personal pick, I would probably go with 12.595. I love that version. 7903. Now you're starting to get into messy territory here, RJ.
It was one honorable mention, right? One.
If it were 5 minutes longer, the 12:30:15 gin would absolutely be there. The segment that sounds like them channeling Wilco's Spider's Kid Smoke is one of my favorite things that Fish has done in the 3.0 era, and I'm here for it. I don't know, man. I could list like 6 others right now, but those 3 would be my honorable mentions. Glenn Russell has a great idea. The honorable mention equals the Crazy Horse Monument. So going forward, everyone will have their Mount Rushmore and then their Crazy Horse.
I love that.
I think
Perfect.
If people haven't listened back to a bunch of these, I do think this was mentioned earlier, but the 9/12/99 version, Mike has this melodic playing that he's doing that like is just really unique and different. And this to me, that's like it's a fun version to go back to.
Stunning version. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so pretty. That's like
really
blissy
great.
waves. Yeah.
The well, we don't have to get into more. Okay.
Do we have fan votes that we can
We do.
share?
Well, I was starting
Oh, yeah.
to read them, and then you guys started doing other stuff. So now I'm
Sorry.
just waiting. Like, what are we doing? We do the fan
I
versions.
couldn't be at I couldn't do a podcast about Bathtub Gin and not talk about that version. It just felt wrong. So sorry.
Yeah.
I opened
Well, I
that
don't
up.
want you to do anything wrong.
I love the idea that a podcast is not for talking. Like this whole thing is for me to just like share my opinions with the world.
Okay. For the fans, we had the most votes. Well, actually, first of all, thanks everybody for sending them in. For those of you who put things like 8/21/1995 or 4/24 1986. I don't know, like if you were just check your answers before you submit them. But okay, so we had the most votes was actually sorry. So Went and Riverport tied for the most votes.
Mhm.
So we got Went and Riverport
makes
going
sense.
backwards chronologically. Murat is on there, and then you guys wouldn't believe the fourth most votes from the fans was Magnaball.
Wow. People love it's attendance bias. People fucking love Magnaball.
We didn't really talk about it much. I mean, it is a marathon of a jam. It's awesome. Like
It's
there's
awesome.
nothing, but the whole weekend was just incredibly fiery, and I think it's almost like it just felt like a marathon to me listening in order. I'm like, wow, this is just insane. Totally insane.
Yeah. I left it off because there's too much adherence to the gin theme. It doesn't break
Yeah.
fully free for the time frame that we're talking about here for the time how long the jam is. But yeah, I mean that was a moment. If you're talking about like moments in fish history and like significant, steps forward. I mean, I remember when that gin started, it had been a really solid first set up to that point in time, and then the vibes walking around set break after set one of night one at Magnaball was akin to the best shows I've ever been to. It was up there with the Fuck Your Face set one. It was up there with Chula Vista 21. Like it was the type of feeling that people were, especially in 2015, were clamoring for from Fish.
Yeah.
This just melt our faces, walk off the stage, and then whole other set to build off of that energy. I know I have great friends who all pushed me to select the Magnaball gin, and I don't think that they're totally wrong, even though I kind of do.
To me, it's like the glorious, sophisticated, modern era peak. So to me, it was, I did think about having it because it's like the way they peak the Magnaball gin is different than the way they would peak like an early mid-90s gin because it has that sophisticated like layering. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's an effortless journey. It's so great. But yeah, I get it. And it was Magnaball was slightly better than Mondegreen. Ouch. Ouch. Ouch.
That's tough.
Mondegreen was great. I know Magnaball was better, but Mondegreen was great. It was just the last day that was not.
So, okay, guys, we are doing Harry Hood next week. I can't believe we're already doing Harry Hood. This is it feels a little fast.
The big guns right out the gate. Come on.
We're not messing around. We're not starting with 46 days or something. All right. So, Brian, do you have any takeaways?
I think that this is right out the gates our most fun series that we've ever done. I think that it you talk about the big guns. Like I think one of the challenges we found with 40 for 40 was until you get to like 93, it's a lot of foundational setting. And I think we found that with top 25 tours as well. It was a lot of like explaining why we did this. There's obviously that here, but I mean, I don't want to give away what songs are coming, but like we're not letting up. Like these are all huge fish songs, and we're talking about huge versions, and we're getting into the weeds about why these versions should stand the test of time. If we are going to make a golden record of fish to send out on Voyager 3 that I will personally finance if needed so that aliens can hear the greatest fish, these are the versions that we're putting on that. So I'm stoked. I've really enjoyed this project so far. I've really enjoyed listening. I'm a couple weeks ahead, so Meg, you should probably catch up. But
I'll
I
work on it.
find it, as a host who tends to over prepare, I find it accessible from a preparation standpoint. I think that
I
the
agree.
listener feedback is great. I think the listeners getting involved. I think having you guys or all two of us listen to another person and then share their thoughts, and we can kind of align or be off track is a very cool feature of this. So I'm here. I'm into this. This is a great idea, RJ. You did an awesome job curating the show and coming up with content for us to take into 2025.
Yeah, this is so awesome. It was so fun.
All right.
And
just
it's so
blame me
nice
when it
not to
goes
have to
wrong.
listen to like 85 shows in a week. It's really nice.
It's pretty hard. We do what we can to bring you all free content. So give us Apple reviews and tell your friends, and send in your thoughts, leave us voicemails, do all the stuff, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.